Hi, and welcome to the tutorial for trimming in CORTEX. I'm Ian, and today I'll be walking you through trimming with the Edit tool. Function help for this tool is available in the Help menu, and as we go through the demo, keyboard shortcuts will appear on the screen for easy reference. For this demo, it's best if you have prior knowledge of working in CORTEX. If this is your first time using CORTEX, we recommend visiting tutorials.mtifilm.com for a few introductory tutorials before coming back here to learn about trimming. Alright, let's get going. Trimming in the CORTEX Edit tool has expanded since previous versions. CORTEX gives the user many different trim types and execution options to make editing in a composition quicker and easier overall. Trims can be made in one of two modes, gap trim mode or ripple trim mode. Click on the Trim button to enable Gap Trim mode, indicated by a red icon and red bars on the timeline. Gap mode only affects the segment or segments actually being trimmed, leaving other media and the overall length of the timeline unaffected. To enable Ripple mode, hold Ctrl and click the Trim button. The icon and timeline bars will turn yellow, and any trims or repositioning actions will ripple all downstream media to make or fill in space required by the trim. One thing to note, in order to make trims, one of the trim modes must be enabled. To make trims in CORTEX, graphically drag the head or tail of the desired segment in either direction, or click the side of the edit you want to trim and enter a trim value on the number pad. While dragging, when the trim reaches a magnetic snapping point, the timecode display will turn red or yellow to indicate the snap. For demo purposes, we're going to show all trims graphically first, and then briefly demonstrate the number pad trimming capabilities. CORTEX offers gap, rolling, slide, slip, and ripple trims. Gap trims are made to one side of a single segment in your composition. To execute a gap trim, hover your mouse cursor over the side of the edit you want to trim, and then click and drag the red bar to extend or shorten the segment as desired. Rolling trims are made to both sides of a single edit. To execute a rolling trim, hold the Shift key and hover your mouse cursor over the edit you want to trim. Click and drag in the desired direction, and CORTEX will trim and extend each side of the edit appropriately. Slide trims are executed by shifting an entire segment up or downstream in the timeline. Hold the Alt key and hover your mouse over the central area of the segment you want to slide trim. As you slide the segment, the adjacent segments will be lengthened or shortened appropriately, keeping the overall length of the timeline intact. Slip trims only affect the selected segment. To execute a slip trim, press Shift and Alt before hovering over the segment you want to trim. Then click and drag. The segment's head and tail will be slipped depending on the direction of the mouse movement. The segment's position and overall length in the composition, though, is left intact. Ripple trims do affect the overall length of the timeline by shifting downstream segments to make or fill in space affected by the length of the trim. To execute a ripple trim, turn ripple mode on by pressing Ctrl and clicking the Trim mode button. If gap trim mode is enabled, you can also hold Ctrl and then execute a ripple trim, indicated by the yellow bars. Drag the desired side of the edit in the direction you want to trim, and CORTEX will adjust all the media downstream accordingly, altering the overall length of the composition. As mentioned, every trim or repositioning action is also possible to execute through the number pad. Use the correct modifier key and select the side or sides you want to trim. Then use the number pad to trim plus or minus the desired length. Pressing plus or minus one time will prompt you to enter a trim duration as timecode. Pressing plus plus or minus minus will prompt entry of a trim value in frames. Gap, rolling, and ripple trims can also be made to multiple tracks at once. Pressing the Shift key while lassoing a single side of an edit on multiple tracks will execute a gap trim for all the selected tracks for that segment. Pressing Shift and lassoing both sides of an edit for multiple tracks will execute a rolling trim of all selected tracks. And pressing Ctrl and selecting a single side on multiple tracks will execute a ripple trim for all the selected tracks. The last thing to go over in the trim modes is repositioning segments. To reposition segments, select the one you wish to move and drag it to its new position or new track. When repositioning segments, Cortex only moves the segments that are selected, even if there is synced audio linked to that clip. So be sure to select all desired tracks before repositioning. Segments can also be removed from the timeline by selecting them and pressing Delete or Lift to leave black in place of the segment, or pressing Ctrl-Delete or Extract to have downstream media rippled to fill in space left by the removed segment. And that is the tutorial for trimming in Cortex. To continue learning about Cortex, visit tutorials.mtifilm.com. For support, to submit a help ticket, or to find other useful information about Cortex, please check out forum.mtifilm.com. Thanks.